4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of sitting here speaking with Christopher Hamze. How you doing today, Christopher?
I'm doing good. And you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm so glad that you could be on the show today because I really want to ask you, what is your story?
So, my company, we kind of got here out of desperation. About 5 years ago, we're really kind of down in the dumps. I mean, we had this idea that just didn't work, and we didn't really know how to turn it around. And through I'll call it a Hail Mary, but through kind of this Hail Mary idea, the whole thing just turned around, and it's all been going uphill since then.
So I appreciate the Cliff Notes version. I want the whole story. Like, how did you get here? Who are you? And really, what have you done?
Sure. I mean, our family in general has always been kind of entrepreneurs. I mean, we don't really work well with other people or for other people. It's a better way to put it. And so I've tried a lot of different things in my life. I mean, I was thinking back the other day of the first, I guess, online venture I've ever tried. And it was a scooter website. And so this would have been, 15 years ago now. And you remember those scooters when they first came out? They're like the 49cc. You step on it, has the control on the throttle, folds up so you can kind of take it with you. And this was first right when AdWords first came out. And so, senior in high school thinking, man, this is the coolest thing in the world that someone types in scooter. Ad pops up, they click on it. And that's my first real endeavor. And there's been a lot since then. I mean, I've owned restaurants. I've just done a lot of things in my life that kind of all center around e-commerce and really trying to figure out how to best use the skills that I've learned. And it's funny too because I originally went to college thinking I was gonna be a lawyer, and I thought that was my path. I just want to be get $300 an hour, work 40 hours a week. And then as I graduated and got into it, I'm like, I can't charge for my time. It feels like when you charge someone for a product, it just seems more fair. I make something, cost me $1, I sell it for $2. It just seems like a more meaningful way to do things, and so kind of gravitate toward those types of businesses.
So let's talk about the chronology, right? So you go and you try the lawyer thing. Seems like that didn't really work out for you. Wasn't really a good fit. What did you then do? Because I feel like a lot of people, they may be stuck in something where they know it's not what they really want, but they may just not know what to do to change it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was I kind of what is with T-Launch today is the technology I fell in love with. So it's one of those things where like I wasn't satisfied in kind of my day job, and so it's just kind of looking for what excites me. And so there's this technology called print on demand. DTG is the one that I really fell in love with. Basically, how do you, instead of using a printer on paper, you print on a T-shirt? And so that just excited me. It just really excited me. And then I try to figure out how do I do something I love, but then actually make it a business that actually makes money. Because it's all well and good to do something that you enjoy and something that's interesting, but it doesn't actually pay the bills, and it really doesn't do much good. But it took me a while to get there. I mean, I did a few things in the middle that I thought I liked, but then again, you get to do something for a year or 2 years. Like I did online marketing for 2 years, and it was fun for a while, but it wasn't fulfilling. Helping other people make money is okay, but it's not what I want to do. I want to spend my time working on stuff that makes me money.
Definitely nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think there's a whole lot of right with that. So can you talk about like how you really came up with the idea? Like what was the catalyst for building the company?
It was Facebook groups. I mean, although they're used a lot today, back 5 years ago, they were really strong. I mean, you go in there and they just have these unbelievable discussions about business models and things they want to do and things they didn't like about the current business that exists. And it was a really it was a fun time because people really gave away a lot. Now I think people are a little more guarded after too many people kind of stole people's ideas and kind of misuse this freedom of information that was out there. People got a lot more guarded, but it was fun. I mean, you just have these groups that have 1,000 people in them, and they're all just sharing ideas and processes. And so it came out of just listening to what people were looking for and where there was a kind of a hole in the market.
And so did you just like get out a crayon and start drawing on some t-shirts? Like what was the actual like process?
Oh yeah. So, so 5 years ago, we bought our first printer. It's called the Cornette. It cost $180,000. And these things basically can do like 15 shirts an hour, which at the time we thought that's great. But then when you realize how many shirts per hour you need to make to actually make any money and pay back this machine, it was a very enlightening process, And through that, we had the technology, we could do it, but we didn't have the delivery mechanism. It was like, okay, this is great, we can print shirts, but how are we going to sell them? How are we going to find customers who would find this service valuable? Because a lot of people can make shirts, but the question is who needed a one-off, one at a time kind of deal. And that's why kind of these groups, we figured out that although these kind of Facebook marketers don't like risk. So they're like, hey, how do I throw up a store, throw up thousands and thousands of designs and not have to worry about buying, 10 of each of them and stick them in a warehouse? And it kind of just, it clicked, the right technology, right time. And then, they figured out the mechanism, which was the app that made it all work.
That's awesome. So when did you really feel like, oh wow, we are really onto something big?
So after it took off like a rocket. I mean, after the second month, went from $0 to $500,000 in sales, and it was just like it couldn't have gone. I mean, we never thought it'd go that well. It's like, okay, we're just trying to basically, the goal was to keep afloat. How do we sell enough to keep the doors open? How do we service the debt? And it just took off like crazy and really helped to. I mean, it was a first few weeks pretty tough because we didn't have any sales, and then just slowly add customer after customer, and it just took off. And so yeah, I'd say about the third month we knew we had a winner there. So.
And how did you actually go from no customers, no sales to getting those first few customers? And then how did you roll that into the rocket ship of taking off?
So luckily it was all, those Facebook groups just seeded everything. Once one person you tell, you throw them, and even like now you can't, these groups who want to make you pay to just mention your business. You just threw hey, I'm here, this is my app, check it out. And then, people saw it and then people told their friends, and it was an amazing snowball down a hill of customers.
So from that beginning, where are you now?
So, it obviously, slowed down after a while because as in any industry matures, you have a lot more competitors that jump in. But it's still the same kind of roots. Basically we're finding, it's funny. Like I probably had conversations with, 20,000 different, e-commerce store owners and figure out what do they need? What are their pain points? What products do they want? What service do they want? And it's been nuts. Like you said, in 5 years, we probably had 120,000 Shopify store owners that have used our service, and we've had to keep evolving. I mean, when we first started was just T-shirts, and now we're probably 40% shirts and 60%, blankets and mugs and a million other things because that's where the market went. As Facebook evolved, as e-commerce store owners evolved, selling one thing over and over, and I think this part it was oversaturated. Think about like Teespring and all these other companies that just sold millions and millions and millions of shirts. Everybody who's on Facebook has probably bought a dozen novelty shirts, and they're ready for something else. And so we're really constantly trying to give them new products that they can actually sell.
So I feel like most people in their lives will never actually be in the position that you are now. Like they will never have built a company that quickly, that incredibly, and built a company of that size. What's it actually like for you day in, day out to be you?
I'm my own worst critic. So although we've had a lot of success, I see the failures more than the successes, just because it almost came too easy. I feel like if it was more harder fought, you would have felt a little bit better about, where you're at, versus like it was so easy and then it became harder. And then it's like, what did I do? What can I do differently? But it's amazing. I mean, it really is. I mean, just to see, because I've had a lot of failures before this. Like I said, I own a lot of restaurants and all of them failed miserably. In the end, it's like to have this many failures and one monster success. It's a gratifying feeling, because there's a lot of times, with all those failures, we could just given up, went back to being a lawyer and just said, I've tried it and I failed and I moved on. But that's not how I felt. I felt like there's something out there that I can do that could be successful, and luckily it worked out.
So going from the different venture to different venture, being a lawyer, doing all the things that you've done, do you feel like you had to go through all of those failures, or do you feel like you could have just gone straight to the big win? Because I feel, and the reason I ask is because I talk to a lot of people every day, and some people tend to think that you can just, be here day one and then just hop over that learning curve and just instantly be successful day three without having to go through the difficult times or the struggles, the failures. Like, was there a way to shortcut it, or do you just have to go through all of those things?
Yeah, I don't think there is. I mean, even in this business, although it's successful and still is successful, there's a lot of rough times where if you don't remember worse times, I don't think you actually could have made it through the tough times. Because that's the problem. It's like if it's really easy, and it's always been easy, the minute something goes sideways, you're gonna think you don't want to know what to do. Versus like when you've gone broke and you've lost a lot of money. I mean, it's humbling, to the point where you just know what to do. Versus like if you've never had a failure in your life, you wouldn't know how to handle it. Versus like now, I mean, the ups and downs are nothing compared to like when we first started this business, we were $750,000 in debt and we had no way out. I mean, the equipment was worthless. We had no ideas. I mean, we could have easily gone bankrupt and that would have been it. But since we've surpassed that, any other obstacle seems tame in comparison.
So now that you're here, what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm still pushing hard. I mean, for me, I don't think I've kind of reached my summit yet. I think a lot of things we've done have applications in other industries, and so we're trying to say, instead of trying to be number one in what we're doing now, how do we take what we've learned and go into another industry that doesn't even know this technology exists? And that's what's been really interesting, because although like in the Facebook marketer world, what we're doing is pretty commonplace. In corporate America, they have no idea this technology exists. In education, they have no idea this technology exists. And so that's where I see us going, is figuring out where's the next frontier, and go in there first instead of just trying to, because I mean, there's a lot of comparison in the industry. There's a lot of, price is a huge issue, and there's margins are decreasing. So it's kind of like that blue ocean strategy. It's like, how do I find this blue ocean instead of just fighting in this red ocean?
So as you've been on this journey, what do you think some of the biggest lessons you've learned, as a human being, as an individual, as an entrepreneur have been?
I mean, never be afraid to pivot. I mean, that's one thing where, although the business is technically the same, we've taken a lot of different approaches to things. And I think that's why we've been successful, is we're small enough where we're agile enough where we can make decisions quickly. Big companies kind of, they're hard to move. They're hard to turn around. And for us, we've just constantly, something isn't working, the sales are slumping, we just pivot and pivot and pivot. And I think that's a big lesson for people, because sometimes they have, your original idea was X and you made a lot of money doing X, and then it starts going wrong. You don't know how to go to Y. You just like, I want to keep trying, keep pushing the same way. It's like, no, I just gotta, try something different and keep finding new and different ways to, again, don't give up on what you've already built, but find different ways to leverage the technology and the knowledge that you've accumulated.
So you probably do a lot of media appearances, and you probably come on a lot of shows and talk to a lot of people. What are the things that people don't ask you about that they should? Like, what are the things that you think people need to hear from you, but nobody really has yet?
It's a tough one. I mean, I've actually, this is my only third podcast. I'm trying to kind of put myself out there. Kind of a a hermit by nature. But I think the biggest, point of our story is perseverance, because we've seen so many of these store owners that we work with that when times get tough, they kind of give up. And I understand sometimes it's out of necessity because the cash flow is gone and they just don't know what to do. But it's really about just not giving up, and that's when, and then be a little more frugal. Like some people, when they start making money, they start buying Lamborghinis and beach houses and whatever. It's like, no, you got to keep the money around. I mean, you gotta have that rainy day fund. I mean, I kind of learned that in the restaurant business, because you don't make money every month in the restaurant business, and December and January, you're losing money. So you got to make sure that the money you made the other 10 months, you're squirreling that away, because you just never know when you're going to need it. And I've seen most of our good customers that have failed is it's cash flow. A few bad months and you're living on the kind of the bubble, and you didn't have that cash flow, then it's over. And it could have been a successful business that we just had, a rough few months. But that's one thing that I really try to tell people is you gotta be a little bit frugal, and I'm not saying live like, one room apartment and one pair of pants, but you just got to be ready for the hard times, because there's no entrepreneur ever that said every month's been glorious. I mean, there's always bad times. So
Yeah, I bet. And I feel like without perseverance, without that desire to just keep going and unrelenting, just pushing forward, moving forward, I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to win, because there's so many other people out there who are willing to put that in. It's almost like that's kind of like the beginning. That's like the benchmark, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You really got, and that's one thing where anybody tells me they want to start their own business, I'm like, you got to be ready to put massive hours in. You got to be ready to have, like for us, I mean, the first 3 years of our business, we lost money, but never, and anybody would have said in that situation, hey, you probably should have gave up and got a real job. But if you feel strongly about what you're doing, you really feel like you have something to give the world, I mean, you just got to keep pushing, and find ways. Like for me, I mean, the first 3 years I had another job. I did that digital marketing, in the daytime, and then did this at night. And you have to find ways to really do what you love, and really push through all the failures. So.
Absolutely. And I do think that every time you do fail, it's kind of like life saying, all right, you tried this one particular thing. It didn't work. It didn't work. But here's like the little nugget of wisdom that you can take with you, put in your metaphorical backpack, and then keep on going down the road, right? Because it like life will discipline you. If you're not doing the right things, like you will get disciplined, and a lot of the times it's pretty painful.
Yep, exactly.
So I'm curious, because I think about this a lot. Like, how big do you want to take it, right? Because if you look in history at some of the most successful people in the history of mankind, they've done incredible things. Like take Augustus Caesar, for example. That dude literally acquired, and of course adjusted for today's inflation, but he literally acquired $2.6 trillion of wealth in his lifetime. He owned Egypt at one point. That's nuts, right? And I feel like he just followed his ambition.
Mm-hmm.
So how big do you want to take it? How big do you want to go?
Not that big. For me, I'm not a good manager of people, and I don't want to have, thousands of employees. I mean, I really, at this level, I enjoy what I do. We only have 6 employees. It's easy to manage. It's one of those things where I couldn't imagine having, like I toured one of our suppliers the other day, and he has 400 employees, and he said he has 1.4 million square footage of warehouse space. I'm like, I could do that. I would just freak out by the enormity of the overhead, and I like being small. I mean, this is the size I like. And then I don't have any ideas of grandeur either, because I don't want to be a billionaire. I mean, I just want to live, be good at something, live a good life. And so no.
So what does that good life look like for you?
For me, I'm a very simple person. Like I live in South Dakota. I mean, you can live like a king for very little. I've never liked fancy cars or fancy houses. And it just, for me, it was, when I was younger, my parents were broke a few times. And so I just love the safety net. Like people think I'm odd because I like plan out how many years of runway I have in my personal life, like how much money, basically if tomorrow, I couldn't work, how many years could I be okay for? And that's kind of how I planned it out. And my goal is how do I get to, 20, 30 years of runway. And then I'm happy at that level.
So then it seems like you're a work to live kind of guy, not a live to work kind of guy.
I'm trying to be. I mean, it's one of those things where like when you're broke, you just it's easier to just justify working all the time, and then you kind of. My problem was haven't found anything to replace work with yet, but I'm definitely trying because it was like when you needed to work, it was okay. Not like you don't need to work. How do you disconnect a bit and do other things and just try to not be a workaholic? Before it's easy to justify in your mind, it's like I have to do this, and now like I don't. But now what do I do? Because unfortunately that's how my dad was, and he's owned restaurants forever, and he just 80 hours a week was normal, and so that's what I thought was normal. And now I'm like, okay, I literally don't want to work 80 hours a week. Now what do I do with those other 30 hours? And I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, I think it's a really good problem to have, and it's a lot of fun, right? Because I mean, you could travel. Like I love playing music, and I play guitar, and oh man, that is fun. And like I don't know, I just feel like there's always something exciting to like to learn about or to do or to play or to explore or discover. Like I don't know, I think that's exciting. It's like an exciting place to be.
Unfortunately, most of my I keep buying equipment. So like I actually bought a knitting machine last year. So like knit beanies. It's a machine that automatically does that. So like I think my only real hobby now is like learning new processes and just trying to figure out what's the next thing. And I have a building full of stuff that I don't use, but it's intriguing because again, that's kind of what DTG was in the beginning. Nobody knew it. Some people, adopted it early and then they became incredibly successful. So it's like, how do you find the next technology that's fun, that's interesting, kind of changes how, because you think about the way the t-shirt industry was, it was all based on large runs. You could never do one-offs. And then this technology came out and it just changed the way, think about all the things, between, Zazzle, Cafe Press, Amazon Merch, none of this would exist without that technology and just opened up. And then you think about photo gifts in general, Shutterfly and Vistaprint and all this stuff where businesses, these billion-dollar businesses, were just because they adopted this technology early and did well with it.
So what industries do you think like are desperately in need of being shaken up? I know you talked a little bit about education and corporate, but like how do you go out and identify, okay, these are the people, or this is the industry, they need to get shaken up, I'm about to bring it hard?
So you're looking at where the pain points are. So in like the B2B world, so there's a lot of these companies that they have what they call company stores. So they'll say, okay, I'm Microsoft, I'm going to give my employees $400 to spend on whatever. The problem is they're kind of guessing on what their employees want. So they stick in a warehouse, $1 million worth of, this shirt and this size and this and this. If they guess wrong at the end of the year, there's a whole bunch of stuff that didn't sell. And now, so it's like, okay, how do you, and again, they call dead stock. It's a huge issue. Even like normal retailers, you think of all these people, like there's a good article about H&M, how they have like $3.4 billion worth of unsold merchandise. Because in the traditional way of manufacturing, you just kind of guess. And if you're wrong, then you discount to the floor until it's gone. But there are these technologies, put on demand where you can say, okay, instead of guessing, obviously there's stuff you'll sell a lot of. You always are going to sell a lot of. That's fine. But sometimes you don't know. Just do it one at a time. And so that's the world I'm excited about because, again, it's a different problem that you're solving. Like in the Shopify world, I have so many designs. I could never stock enough stuff. I want to be agile. I want to test things. So it's a different problem that the corporate guys have, but it's one that we've been kind of going after for a year now, and people are very open by it because you explain to them that, okay, now you have this $1 million of stuff you couldn't sell. Now you say, okay, you could have, although you're paying more per unit up front, now with none of this dead stock, now actually your cost per unit is actually lower. And so it's a really fun thing. And then like we're getting into schools like fundraising lately too, because again, these schools they're buying the same stuff every year. It's like, okay, this local guy has this shirt, and we buy this with their logo on it every single year, and that's all we have. Versus like, okay, now I'm giving you, like, we have, blankets and hooded blankets and headphones and like all this stuff they've never seen before. And so it's just very fun, like showing people that have never, and they don't even know, like people know print on demand exists, but they don't quite understand it. Like, okay, I ordered a shirt from Cafe Press. They don't really know that it's one at a time, or this pillow from Shutterfly. They don't really understand it. But once you kind of explain to them that, okay, all this stuff that you've never seen before, I can give you one at a time. You can test whatever. You can, have a store like we do these school stores. You can, in a day, I can create a store with 50 different products, which in any other context, that would take you months to do, because you'd have to order it up, wait till it comes in, take a picture, put it online. And so it's a very fun thing to kind of take somebody who doesn't understand what you do, explain it to them, and then they just really get it and like it. So
That's awesome. And I think it really almost speaks to, solving a problem of waste and overproduction. It seems like that's really tackling that problem. And I know just in America, like the food that we create and throw away every
yeah.
year. I mean, that's unreal. It is unreal how much waste there is. So it seems like you're really tackling a really difficult problem, but bringing a really interesting solution to it. Do you see this technology being able to get applied to something like food, where I maybe don't see the connection right now, but like industries like food or agriculture or anything like that, like how can these technologies be applied to other industries in really innovative ways?
I mean, and generally the ideology is, just in time. And there's a lot of things where, in the auto industry, that's one thing they've, in Japan, I mean, they do it all the time. It's basically, why produce something in bulk and sit in a warehouse when I can just produce it and use it as I need it? So it's the same. I mean, it can be applied to any industry. I mean, it's one of those things where, unfortunately, a lot of these products are so cheap that people think it's worth the risk or the waste, which is silly. When you think about just all the massive amounts of, let's say, it's like soda cans. I mean, Soda Stream actually, it makes a lot more sense because you're taking all this wasteful packaging out. But again, aluminum's so cheap, people think, okay, why would I innovate when people are willing to pay that extra quarter? So I definitely see eventually this is all going to come to a head when things start getting more expensive. People start really understanding the true cost of all of this waste. And so it's a good, I mean, I like what we're doing. I mean, I wouldn't say we're necessarily like environmental driven, but I like the idea of we're not just producing stuff for the sake of producing it. And even though, like, okay, it's not like getting wasted. No one's just, well, it could be. I mean, there's always like these luxury brands, like I forget who it was, but every year they burn everything that doesn't sell because they don't want to have last year's stuff decreasing the price of this year's stuff.
Oh,
I think it's
kills me.
Burberry. Yeah, I think Burberry. Anyway, it's nuts how. But again, it's one of those things where, unfortunately, these inputs are just too cheap, and they're like, for some reason they're willing to do it. But I think if more people are demanding that people are a little bit more efficient with how they produce things, then it'll become much more important.
I definitely think so. Absolutely. So does that, like that ideology, that philosophy of just in time, of not overproducing, do you think that because your company's in there, or do you think your company's in that space because that's like a core value that you hold, or did it just kind of, you think that just kind of was a coincidence?
I mean, generally, I'm not, I'm not a wasteful person in general, so I think it just made sense to me. Like, why would you produce all this stuff? Because again, it's just a weird thing to think about how retail's evolved. I mean, obviously, when there was no e-commerce, you kind of had to make in bulk and stick in a store. I mean, there's no way around it. But now that everything is, online, there's so many things you could do smarter. Obviously, if it's made, in a foreign, which even like, we have a lot of products that we do that are made in China that they do at a one-time basis. You could literally, if you have, let's say you're making a dress, and the fabric's just sitting on the on the shelf in China. When the order comes, you could cut it, sew it, ship it. I mean, there's a lot of ways where it makes a lot more sense. And I think probably since we've Teen Lunch has evolved, I've probably gotten much more I guess, passionate about that. And in the beginning, I probably didn't give as much of a care, but now it's just see you, especially when you get in this corporate stuff, how much money is wasted and how much of the stuff that literally, because again, like if it's a retail store, you can just discount to the floor and then someone's going to buy it. But if it's like a brand where you're just giving it away to your employees, you're not just going to give it away. Most of the time they get, they destroy it. I mean, sometimes they recycle it. If it's shirts, you can just, whatever. But yeah, it's really just nuts when you think about, and that's what's issue with all these retail closings. You kind of look at all these different brands, and that's one of the biggest killers. Like Forever 21, just again, they just declared for bankruptcy, and it's like a lot of that's because they're making the wrong merchandising decisions. The stuff isn't selling. They're discounting the floor. Their margins go to the floor. And if they were a little bit smarter about how they did things, I think they'd be in much better shape.
So do you think, like looking 10, 15, 20 years out, do you think there's going to be like a shift where everybody's moving to this model of doing things? Or do you think it's going to be like the really big brands, they're going to kind of do it the way they've always done it, and then the more agile, innovative companies are going to come up? There's going to kind of be this like back and forth. Like, how do you see that playing out in the future?
I mean, I think everybody's taking notice of it. Like I was reading an article about Nike the other day about how they're working on these smaller runs of shoes. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to make one shoe that I make a million pairs of, they're having these like micro collections where, again, it's a much smaller batch size. And I think everybody's realizing that once you look at, again, if you're like Nike, you're going to sell a lot of shoes. I mean, it doesn't hurt you, to make a bunch ahead of time. And as manufacturing is coming, back to the US too, that's another thing. Because again, it's a lead time issue. Like if it's in China, it takes 90 days. You really have to, make in advance. But I think people are now looking at smarter ways to not make so much in advance. And I think too, is like before it was easier to forecast. There's just a handful of stores. Let's say back in the Sears days, Sears knew exactly what they're going to sell because they had very few competitors. You kind of could really read the market. But now when you think about all these, direct-to-consumer brands that are just popping up overnight, you really don't have a good idea of where your customers are, what they're going to buy, and so you just have to be more agile because otherwise you're just going to keep eating, lots of inventory that you just, you can't move. You just don't. Again, it's just forecasting is much harder in this day and age because you just don't know who's going to come up next. And they like the mattress industry. I mean, they thought they had it locked down, and then Casper and Purple and all these guys just came out of the woodworks and just, took all their market share because they, were more agile and no one saw them coming. Really.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Christopher, I do want to thank you very much for coming on the show today, and and talking about this. And I've had a lot of fun. So thank you very much. And I do have one more question for you, then we'll wrap it on up. So I'm 24, by the way, and I say that just because I want to ask specifically from my perspective. But what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Again, that's a hard one. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no clue.
All good. Well, hey man, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I really do appreciate your time. And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank y'all very, very much. Your time is very valuable too. So I'm glad that y'all could be with us today. And I definitely learned a lot. So I would love to hear what y'all learned too. So let me know. So thank you again, Christopher. Thank you everybody for watching and listening. And I'll see y'all on the next episode. Take care now.